I never thought money would be the thing that cracked my marriage open. Not infidelity, not some late-night text popping up on his phone, not lipstick on a collar or a stranger's perfume clinging to a jacket. It was money. Quiet, boring, unromantic money. Numbers that didn't add up. Transactions that didn't make sense. A slow drip of missing cash that made me feel crazy before it made me feel angry. We'd been married 11 years. 11. Long enough that you stop keeping score of little things. Long enough that routines replace passion, and you convince yourself that stability is love. We lived in a 3-bedroom house in a decent suburb outside Columbus. Not fancy, but solid. Good schools, quiet streets, the kind of place where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen. My husband, Mark, worked in logistics for a regional shipping company, mid-level management. Not glamorous, but steady. I worked remotely as a project coordinator for a healthcare software firm. Between us, we were comfortable. Not rich, but not stressed. Or at least that's what I thought. We had a shared checking account for household expenses and separate personal accounts we barely used. That was Mark's idea when we got married. Transparency, he'd said, like it was a badge of honor. And for years, it worked. Mortgage, groceries, utilities, insurance, gas. Predictable, boring, safe. Until it wasn't. The first time I noticed something off, I brushed it away. It was late January. Cold, gray. One of those months where everything feels heavy. I was reconciling our budget like I always did at the end of the month. I pulled up the bank app on my laptop, coffee cooling beside me, and stared at the balance longer than usual. We were short. Not by hundreds, by a few thousand. At first, I assumed I'd missed a bill. Maybe the property tax payment went through early. Maybe the insurance premium changed. I scrolled through the transaction list slowly, line by line. Mortgage was normal. Utilities were normal. Credit card payments were normal. There were a few ATM withdrawals I didn't recognize. Cash withdrawals. Large ones. 500 here, 700 there, spread out over weeks. Mark never used cash, ever. He was the guy who paid for a $2 coffee with a card. He hated carrying bills. He'd say it made his wallet bulky. I told myself there had to be an explanation. I closed the laptop and went about my day. People forget things. I forget things. Marriage means giving the benefit of the doubt, right? That night, while we were cleaning up after dinner, I asked casually, "Hey, did you pull out some cash recently?" He didn't look at me right away. He was rinsing a plate, staring into the sink like it was fascinating. "Yeah," he said. "Why?" I leaned against the counter. "I just saw a couple withdrawals I didn't recognize." He shrugged. "Work stuff. I had to pay a vendor who doesn't take cards." That didn't sit right. His job didn't involve paying vendors in cash, ever. But I didn't push. I didn't want to be the paranoid wife over a spreadsheet, so I nodded and let it go. February came and went, then March. The withdrawals continued, sometimes from ATMs near his office, sometimes from ones across town, once from an ATM near a bar I'd never heard of. The amounts grew larger. Our savings started shrinking. I began moving money around to cover things, telling myself it was temporary, that Mark would explain it eventually, that I was being dramatic. But something inside me started tightening, a quiet alarm, a sense that I was standing on unstable ground. I started checking the account more often, daily, sometimes multiple times a day. Each time I felt a mix of dread and guilt. Dread over what I might find. Guilt for spying on my own husband. Then came the credit card. We had one joint card we used for household stuff, gas, groceries, the occasional dinner out. In April, I noticed charges that weren't ours, restaurants we'd never been to, boutique hotels downtown, ride shares at odd hours. I asked him again, this time less casually. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, the TV on but muted. The glow from his phone lit his face. "Mark," I said, "what's going on with the spending lately?" He sighed like I'd just asked him to solve world hunger. "What do you mean?" "There are charges I don't recognize, cash withdrawals, hotels." He finally looked at me, irritation flashing across his face. "I told you, work stuff, client meetings, sometimes I have to stay late." I stared at him. "At a hotel?" He laughed, short and humorless. "You're reading too much into this." That was the moment something shifted. Not because I suddenly knew he was cheating, but because he dismissed me. Because the man who used to sit on the edge of the bed and talk things through now treated my concern like an inconvenience. I stopped asking after that, but I didn't stop watching. I started pulling bank statements and saving PDFs on my laptop. I made a spreadsheet. Dates, locations, amounts. I told myself it was for clarity, for understanding, but deep down, I think I was building a case. Against him, against the life I thought we had. The nights grew quieter. Mark started coming home later. He said traffic was bad. He said deadlines were insane. He said he was exhausted. He stopped touching me. Not abruptly, gradually, like someone dimming a light so slowly you don't notice the room going dark until you're already stumbling. I lay awake next to him, staring at the ceiling, listening to his breathing, wondering who he was thinking about, wondering if he felt guilty, wondering if I was already a stranger to him. One night in May, I woke up around 2 a.m. and realized he wasn't in bed. I padded down the hallway, heart pounding, and found him in the garage, sitting in his car with the door closed, phone pressed to his ear. I froze in the doorway. I could hear his voice through the glass, low, soft, intimate in a way he hadn't sounded with me in months. "I miss you too," he said. My stomach dropped. I stepped back quietly and returned to bed, my hand shaking. When he finally came back inside, he slid into bed like nothing had happened. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, after he left for work, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the bank statements spread out in front of me. The numbers blurred together. All I could think was that the money wasn't just disappearing. It was being redirected, towards someone else, towards a life I wasn't part of. I didn't cry, not yet. I felt hollow, like something had already ended and my body just hadn't caught up. I told myself I needed proof, not for revenge, not for a confrontation, for myself, so I wouldn't let him gaslight me into believing I was imagining things. I logged into the credit card account again. There was a charge from the night before. A restaurant downtown. Expensive, romantic. The kind of place people go when they're trying to impress someone. I looked at the timestamp, 9:42 p.m. That was when he texted me that he was stuck in traffic. I sat there in the quiet house, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound, and realized that the money wasn't the cause of what was happening. It was the trail, and I had just started following it. After that night, I started living in 2 realities at once.
There was the surface version of my life, the one where I woke up, made coffee, answered emails, asked Mark how his day was, nodded at his excuses, folded his laundry. And then there was the other version, the one that ran underneath everything, where every sound felt louder, every detail felt loaded, and every dollar felt like it was whispering secrets I wasn't supposed to hear. I didn't tell anyone. Not my sister, not my closest friend. Saying it out loud felt like making it real, and I wasn't ready for that. As long as it stayed inside my head, it was still just suspicion, still something I could maybe undo. But I couldn't stop looking. I started tracking everything. Not obsessively, I told myself, methodically. Like a grown adult trying to understand her finances, I pulled statements going back a year. I highlighted anything that didn't fit. ATM withdrawals, restaurants, ride shares, hotels, bars, charges from places near his office, but also places that made no sense at all. Patterns emerged. The cash withdrawals clustered around Tuesdays and Thursdays. The hotel charges were always midweek, never weekends. The ride shares were almost always late evening, usually between 9 and 11. I matched dates to his calendar. Late meeting, client dinner, inventory review. The words sat there, neat and professional, while the charges underneath told a completely different story. I felt like I was watching my marriage decompose in a spreadsheet. One afternoon, I noticed something I'd missed before, a charge from a woman's clothing boutique downtown, not a department store, a small, trendy place I'd walked past 100 times but never gone into because everything in the window cost too much. My heart started racing. I zoomed in on the transaction, $386. I stared at it for a long time, my mouth dry. Mark had never bought me clothes. Not like that. He hated shopping. He'd panic if you asked him to pick up socks. When he did buy gifts, they were safe, practical. A blender, a coat from Costco, things you couldn't mess up. This wasn't for me. I clicked through more statements and found another one. Lingerie store, $210. Then a salon, then a spa. Each charge felt like a small slap. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to shake him awake in the middle of the night and demand the truth. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. I smiled when he came home. I asked about his day. I made dinner. I hated myself for that part, for playing along, for letting him kiss my cheek like everything was normal. But I was scared of what would happen once I crossed that line, scared of losing the version of my life that still existed, even if it was fake. One night, while he was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wasn't trying to snoop, I really wasn't, but the screen lit up and I saw a name I didn't recognize. It was just a first name, Lena. My chest tightened. I stared at the phone like it might explode. I knew his passcode, of course I did. We'd never had secrets like that. My hand hovered over the screen. Then I pulled back. I couldn't do it. Not yet. There was still some part of me that wanted to believe there was an explanation, that I was misreading things, that opening that phone would end something permanently. When he came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, steam filling the room, he smiled at me like nothing was wrong. I smiled back and felt like I was lying to both of us. The next day, I drove downtown during my lunch break. I told myself I was just getting out of the house, just clearing my head, but my hands shook on the steering wheel as I parked across the street from the boutique. I sat in my car and watched people go in and out, women mostly, stylish, confident, younger than me. I imagined Mark standing inside, awkward and out of place, asking for help. Imagined him smiling nervously. Imagined him thinking about someone else's body instead of mine. I didn't go in. I couldn't. Instead, I drove home and cried in my office chair until my eyes burned. The money kept disappearing. At one point, I realized we'd dipped into our emergency savings, the account we'd promised each other we'd never touch unless something catastrophic happened. Apparently, something had. I confronted him again, this time about the savings. I tried to keep my voice steady, calm, rational. Mark, our savings are down almost $10,000. He barely looked up from his laptop. I know. You know? Yeah, I moved some money around. For what? He sighed, rubbing his temples like I was giving him a headache. Why are you interrogating me? I'm not interrogating you. I'm asking. Because I needed it. For what? I repeated. He snapped his laptop shut and finally looked at me. His eyes were cold, defensive. Not the man I married. You don't trust me, he said. I felt like I'd been punched. That's not fair. It is fair, he shot back. You're acting like I'm doing something wrong. Are you? Silence stretched between us. Thick, heavy. He stood up and walked past me, grabbing his keys. I'm going for a drive. The door slammed so hard the walls rattled. I sat on the couch, staring at the spot where he'd been, and realized something terrifying. I wasn't just afraid of losing him. I was afraid of how little he seemed to care if he lost me. That night, I finally crossed the line I'd been avoiding. He fell asleep quickly, turned away from me, his back a wall I couldn't get through. I lay there for a long time, listening to the house settle, waiting until his breathing deepened. Then I reached for his phone. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped it. The passcode worked. Of course it did. I didn't know what I was looking for, only that I'd know it when I saw it. There were messages, hundreds of them. Long threads, inside jokes, pet names, things he hadn't called me in years. She was real, very real. Photos, not explicit, but intimate enough. Her smile, her legs crossed at a bar, a mirror selfie in a dress I recognized from the boutique window. I scrolled back months, then a year. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a fling. It was a parallel life. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. I covered my mouth to keep from making a sound. She knew about me. I saw it in the messages. Jokes about your wife, complaints about how complicated things were, promises that he was working on it. Working on what? Leaving me. I put the phone back exactly where it had been and lay there until morning, staring into the dark. Something inside me hardened that night. The confusion burned away, replaced by a quiet, terrifying clarity. The money wasn't just funding an affair, it was funding his exit. And I realized with a sick twist in my stomach that I had no idea how far he was willing to go. I didn't confront him right away. That surprised even me. You'd think after seeing the messages, after knowing her name, her face, the way he talked to her like she was oxygen, I would have exploded, thrown the phone, screamed, demanded answers. But something about that night rewired me. It was like my emotions went underground. I still felt everything, but it was quieter, sharper, more focused. I wasn't panicking anymore. I was observing. The next morning, Mark kissed me on the forehead before work like he always did. I stood still and let him. His lips felt unfamiliar, foreign.
I watched him grab his keys, complain about traffic, complain about a meeting he didn't want to go to. He lied with the same tone he used when he talked about the weather. As soon as he left, I locked the door and sat on the kitchen floor. I didn't cry. I shook, like my body was trying to purge something toxic. I replayed the messages in my head. The way he told her he missed her. The way he complained about me without using my name, like I was an inconvenience instead of a person. The way he talked about our house as if it were temporary. That was the part that hurt the most. Not that he was sleeping with someone else. Not even that he loved someone else. It was that he was already mentally gone. He checked out while still using my stability, my income, my trust to finance his double life. I opened my laptop and pulled up our bank accounts again. This time, I wasn't looking for clues. I was looking for damage. I added everything up. Every unexplained withdrawal, every hotel, every dinner, every gift. I went back 18 months. When I finished, my hands were numb. Just over $32,000. That was how much of our shared money he'd spent on her. $32,000 I'd earned too. Money I'd worked late nights for. Money meant for emergencies, vacations, the future. Gone. Redirected. Invested in someone else's body, someone else's happiness. I closed the laptop slowly. That's when the anger finally hit. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't dramatic. It was cold and heavy and deliberate, the kind of anger that doesn't scream, the kind that plans. Over the next few days, I paid attention to things I'd ignored before. His schedule, his excuses, the way he angled his phone away from me, the way he suddenly cared about his appearance on weekdays but not weekends, the way he smelled faintly like a different soap sometimes. I stopped covering for him. I stopped moving money around to make things work. When a bill bounced, I let it bounce. He noticed immediately. "What happened with the credit card?" he asked one evening, irritation already creeping into his voice. "I don't know," I said calmly. "You're the one who's been using it." He stared at me, suspicious. "Are you trying to make a point?" "No," I said. "I'm trying to understand our finances." He scoffed. "You're being dramatic." There it was again, that word, dramatic. Like the slow theft of tens of thousands of dollars was some emotional whim on my part. That night, while he was asleep, I went back into his phone. This time I took screenshots, messages, photos, dates, locations. I emailed them to myself from an account he didn't know existed. I felt sick doing it, but I also felt grounded, like I was anchoring myself to reality so he couldn't rewrite it later. I looked her up online. Lena. She wasn't hard to find. She had a public profile. She lived downtown in a high-rise apartment. She worked in marketing for a startup. She posted pictures of cocktails, skyline views, brunch plates arranged like art. There was one photo that made my stomach turn, a mirror selfie in a hotel room. I recognized the wallpaper immediately, one of the places he charged to our card. The caption was something about midweek escapes. I closed the app and sat there, breathing slowly. I didn't hate her. Not really. I didn't know her. She was a character in a story Mark had written without my consent. If anything, I wondered what version of him she knew, what lies he'd fed her, whether she believed he was trapped with me, whether she thought she was saving him. That weekend, Mark said he had to work. I watched him pack an overnight bag, his movements casual, practiced. He didn't even look guilty anymore. He was comfortable. As soon as he left, I drove to my sister's house. She knew something was wrong the second she opened the door. I guess I'd been holding it together with sheer willpower, and the second I saw her, it cracked. I told her everything. The money, the messages, the woman. I watched her face change from concern to shock to pure rage. "Oh, hell no," she said when I finished. "Absolutely not." She wanted me to confront him immediately, kick him out, call a lawyer, call his parents, burn everything down. I listened, I nodded, but inside I knew I wasn't ready yet, because there was still one thing I needed. The truth, out loud, from him. I needed to hear him say it. When Mark came back Sunday night, relaxed and almost cheerful, I knew it was time. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd planned vacations, where we'd signed mortgage papers, where we'd eaten countless quiet dinners. "I know about her," I said. He froze. For a split second, his mask slipped. Fear flashed across his face, then calculation. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. I slid my phone across the table. The screenshots glowed between us. He stared at them for a long time. Then he leaned back in his chair and exhaled. "Okay," he said quietly. That word shattered something in me. Not sorry, not denial. "Okay." "How long?" I asked. He rubbed his face with both hands. "A while." "A while?" My voice stayed steady, even though my chest felt like it was collapsing. "You spent over $30,000, Mark." I was going to pay it back. "With what?" I asked. "More lies?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw it clearly. He wasn't sorry he'd done it. He was sorry he'd been caught. "I didn't plan for it to happen like this," he said. "Like what?" I asked. "Like betraying me? Like draining our accounts? Like building a second life?" "She understands me," he said softly. That was the moment I knew our marriage was over. Not because he loved someone else, but because he said that like it justified everything. Like my pain was collateral damage. I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but I stayed upright. "You need to leave," I said. He blinked. "What?" "You heard me. This is my house too," he snapped. "Not tonight," I said, "and not funded by my money anymore." We stared at each other across the table. Two people who shared a last name, a mortgage, a history. Strangers. He laughed bitterly. "You think you're going to ruin my life over this?" I looked at him and realized something terrifyingly liberating. "I think you already did," I said. "I'm just done protecting you from it." He left that night, not in a dramatic way. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just a duffel bag and a stiff silence. When the house was quiet again, I walked through every room slowly, touching walls, sitting on the bed, letting the weight of what had happened settle. I wasn't broken. I was furious. I was grieving. I was scared. But I was awake. And I knew this wasn't over.
Not even close. The first night alone felt unreal. The house was too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I slept on my side of the bed out of habit, staring at the door, half expecting him to come back and tell me this was all a misunderstanding. He didn't. Morning came anyway. I called a liar before I called anyone else. That felt cold, even to me, but I was done being reactive. I needed to protect what was left of my life before Mark found another way to take from it. The attorney was calm, methodical, asked questions in a neutral tone that made everything feel less personal and more procedural. Assets, accounts, length of marriage, any evidence of financial misconduct. I had plenty.
When I forwarded her the spreadsheet, the screenshots, the bank statements, she paused. I could hear her typing. Stop. "This is significant," she said. "You did the right thing documenting it." For the first time in weeks, I felt something like validation, not sympathy, not pity, just confirmation that I wasn't crazy. Mark texted me that afternoon. Just one line. "We need to talk." I stared at it for a long time before replying. "We already did. Talk to my lawyer." That set him off. The messages came fast after that. Angry, defensive, accusatory. He said I was overreacting, that I was trying to destroy him, that I was turning a personal issue into a legal nightmare. I didn't respond. 2 days later, I changed the locks. He showed up that evening, pounding on the door like he still had the right. I watched him through the window, my heart racing, my hands cold. "You can't do this," he yelled. "This is insane." I opened the door just enough to speak. "You drained our accounts and lied to me for over a year. What part of that makes you think you still get access?" He stared at me, stunned, like this version of me didn't match the script he had in his head. "This is because of her, isn't it?" he said. "You're jealous." That was almost funny. Almost. "This is because of you," I said, and closed the door. The divorce process was ugly in the way most real things are. No dramatic courtroom speeches, just paperwork, emails, financial disclosures. The more that came out, the worse it looked for him. Cash withdrawals he couldn't explain, credit card charges tied directly to her, our joint savings emptied without my consent. He tried to backpedal, tried to frame it as mutual spending, tried to say I'd agreed. The record said otherwise. Lena didn't reach out to me. Not at first. I didn't reach out to her either. I didn't want explanations from a stranger. I wanted accountability from the man who'd promised me a life. But about a month in, I got a message request from her. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit there, unread, like a live wire. When I finally did, it was short. I didn't know the extent of what he was doing. I'm sorry. I read it 3 times. There was a longer message underneath. She said he told her we were basically roommates, that we were separated in everything but name, that the money was his, that he was in the process of leaving. I believed that she believed him. I didn't respond, not because I was trying to be strong or graceful, but because nothing I said would change what had already happened. Apologies didn't refill accounts or rewind time. A week later, Mark moved in with her. That hurt more than I expected, not because I wanted him back, but because it confirmed how replaceable I'd been in his mind, how easily he'd stepped into the life he'd been rehearsing all along. Mutual friends started choosing sides, even though no one said it out loud. Some stopped calling, some asked invasive questions, some told me how complicated things were, like complexity excused betrayal. I learned quickly who actually cared about me and who just cared about being comfortable. The house went on the market in the middle of summer. I walked through it one last time before the listing photos were taken, bare walls echoing, memory stacked in corners. I didn't cry. I felt tired, ready. On the day the sale closed, I sat in my car in the parking lot of the title company and stared straight ahead while my phone buzzed with notifications. Funds transferred, accounts updated. A clean, sterile end to something that had once been everything. Mark tried to talk to me afterward. He said he never meant to hurt me, that he was just unhappy, that things got out of control. I listened without interrupting. Then I said, "You didn't just cheat on me, you stole from me. You lied to my face for over a year. You don't get to rewrite that as confusion." He looked genuinely shaken by that, like it was the first time he'd heard it framed that way. We finalized the divorce 3 months later. I moved into a small apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture was chosen intentionally, every bill paid by me, every dollar accounted for. The quiet felt different there, not empty, peaceful. Sometimes late at night, I still think about how close I came to missing it all, how easy it would have been to keep trusting, to keep assuming, to keep smoothing things over while my life was quietly being dismantled behind my back. It wasn't intuition that saved me. It wasn't strength or courage or some dramatic moment of clarity. It was a bank statement. Money doesn't lie. People do. I don't hate Mark. I don't wish him misery. I just don't protect him anymore. I don't carry his secrets or soften his story.
What happened happened, and I survived it. More than that, I reclaimed myself from a life I didn't realize had been draining me dry. And I'll never ignore the numbers again.